All right, thanks for coming. This is a few of my favorite things. I'm dangur with Civic Actions. We do open and agile digital services for government. And we do quite a bit of Drupal. I guess we've been doing it for about 15 years. About a third of that time I've been with the company, and it's a pretty good time. So just wanted to go over a few of the things that I really like about Drupal. Of course, when you do a fresh installation, it's pretty lame. Not really much going on at all. So the magic really is in, what we add to it and the modules, extensions, and all that. And so that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. So I went over to the modules page and I noticed that there were some options. And so that can be a little bit of an intimidation when you've got that many options. Maybe some sort of confusion or paralysis, just because we don't really have time to look through that many projects to see what we want to use. And so I wanted to go through, just some of those and kind of different categories of projects. And then at the end, I'm hoping that we can share some of the projects that different folks in this room like to use and learn from each other in that way. So I wanted to do a focus on Gov projects also. This being Drupal GovCon, and one of those things is the theme system, and the USWDS system is really nice, the web design system. And if folks want to get more into this, there is a double session tomorrow afternoon right after lunch, so like same time as this, but just tomorrow. And it's these two sessions with a panel discussion included. So if you are a themer or theme curious and want to get more into the USWDS system, please check that out. Should also be a fun time. So going front to back here, the Backend has some interesting kinds of projects that we like to use. One that I recently became aware of is the material admin, which is also a theme, but it's focused on the Backend. And the material design is from Google, so it looks a lot like the Google admin kind of experience. If that's something that you're familiar with, then this will look quite familiar too. And here's just kind of some screenshots of what that might look like. It does at this point require, I think, some tweaks. It's not, quite as dialed in for Drupal as, say, like the 7 admin theme, having been, worked over for, I don't know, is it decades? But it's certainly getting there, and the UX people seem to like it quite a bit, so something to check out there. Also the masquerade module. This can be really helpful if you are trying to like get in and do some testing and you want to maybe log in as a user with a different role. You can just use the masquerade module to type in the username just in a little box, and it'll make it seem like you're logged in as that other user, so you're masquerading as another user, and you can use that for testing or just kind of quickly switching between roles. I know it's not uncommon to roll something out, and then people who are logged in as different roles will be like, wait, this doesn't work, because they're logged in as maybe a content editor, and the developer is always logged in as an administrator, user one, and doesn't think about the permissions or doesn't check them. So that masquerade module is pretty good for that. And another cool back-endy kind of project that I like to use is conditional fields. So this is the kind of thing where sometimes you might have a form that has like a gajillion fields, and you're scrolling forever, or you're trying to figure out how to put these fields somehow on the page. Conditional fields are just that, so you can only show some fields if maybe another field is set to a certain value. So an example is like, are you attending Drupal GovCon? If I say no, then the field for would you like a lunch is not even on the form. But if I say yes, I am going to Drupal GovCon, then it'll say, what kind of lunch would you like to have? So kind of a cool little project there. So moving over to content then, and the deploying thereof. There's a couple projects here that are pretty helpful. Default content deploy. And this is nice to use if maybe your project, it's in development and you maybe don't have a database yet, or you have some static content that you want to move around different environments, like dev stage, production kind of environments. You can use this default content deploy to just put your content into configuration and use that to just load it up on any environment you want. You can put it on your local, and it's really nice like that. You can also set it up where different content will appear on different environments if that's something you want to do. So it's nice to have that flexibility. And then there's also hook, update, deploy tools, which sounds like a little bit of a mouthful, and it kind of is, right? So that is a project that is used. Basically, you can update the database. You can press that button that says update the database. Or you can run that by Drush or Drupal console, or whatever kind of trickery you want to have run the database updates. Basically, that will trigger updates that you can put into your module, and within those you can use this module to kind of enhance that experience. So a lot of different types of entities can be altered within there. So there's support for menus and nodes and all manner of different entities, and it happens automatically. So it has really good messaging support too, so you can see what's happening either if you're doing it manually or if you're running it in an automated kind of continuous integration type of situation, then it'll put that messaging into the logging, so you can see maybe this is where it went sideways, or this is where it went smashingly. So a couple of nice tools there. And speaking of content, double clicked there. And, we'll take a look at the moderation of content. So this is in Core now in Drupal 8. I'm just kind of assuming that most people are kind of 8 friendly at this point. Yeah? No? Anyone not? Yeah? Okay. You'll get there. So some of these modules exist in 7 also. I'd say most of them do as well. And so a nice add-on to that content moderation is these notifications. And you can just go through in the UI and make them, send them out to roles. So if you want maybe an editor role needs to approve something before it gets published, they would get an email or some kind of notification that content is ready for approval through this module. And it's also pretty extendable too. You can plug into it if you want to get a little bit crazy with your notifications. So that's always fun. And then also, when you're dealing with moderation, a common kind of occurrence is that scenario where you need to be able to view content that's unpublished. So that view unpublished module has that's actually the human readable name right there. I think they confused the machine field with their human readable field, but they went for the view _ unpublished. So that's the official name of the module. And yeah, also kind of self-explanatory there, where you can see content that's not published that you maybe need to approve, but if you can't view it, then it's pretty hard to approve it. So that kind of solves that problem of the not being able to see content because it's not in the published state. So there are also field types. A few field types come with Drupal core, but these are kind of some field types that you'll probably want to use, some common field types. I'll be sharing these slides also after, and there are links to lots of the projects in them, so no need to scribble furiously unless you want to. But the address field is pretty nice because it combines all of those fields into one, and has support for like states and all that stuff, so you don't have to rebuild the wheel just to get an address in a properly structured sort of way. Has validation. And then there's the date time project, which, no surprise here, it allows the user to save the date and time in a lot of different formats. There's also a date time range project, which is nice. Like if you wanted to say that this session starts at 1 and ends at hopefully 1:45 if I timed it out properly. You could put a time range, or you can do a date range too. File is a pretty big one. If you wanted to allow for file uploads, either in the admin interface or maybe public file uploads. And images also a pretty common one. It's just allows you to put your images in a structured kind of way so that they're not kind of flying all over the place willy-nilly. And link is also a nice one, which is kind of a combination of the link itself and then what will be displayed when you click on that link. And then also telephone. And the telephone is nice because it'll make the link with a little TEL colon in front of it, so you can just start talking to the person. Maybe if you don't actually want people to call you, you might not want to use that, but it's pretty slick sort of formatting there. And those are some cool field types that are pretty common. All right, so group, if you knew organic groups from Drupal 7, we just use group now. We don't really use organic groups anymore. Group is way better in Drupal 8. And it also has a submodule called group node, where you can associate nodes with a group, which is a pretty nice thing to be able to do. Along those lines, there's also the subgroup module, which is a similar kind of thing to group node, but it's where you can associate other groups with a group. So, for instance, okay, if you had maybe a type of an organization where you had like a high level sort of parent organizations, and then a lower level sub organizations under there, you could use subgroup to make those associations. And it does work, but I will give the caveat that subgroup is not really a legitimate project right now. It's actually a patch to the group project, which makes it kind of weird. Sometimes it doesn't really have its own issue queue. It has a very long thread, and it's still kind of getting its sea legs because it is a submodule of group. So just kind of throw that out there. You might have a little bit of trickery going on if you're wanting to do the subgroup thing. But group menu, coming back to the middle there, is a legitimate project. Is a legitimate project, not illegitimate. So that should be good, and that's the kind of thing where you can associate a menu with a group, which is a pretty common kind of a thing, especially in bigger agencies. Each kind of group wants to be able to do their own thing, so this allows you to have menus for each of those groups, and they can somewhat autonomously control their menu destiny in this way. See, we use the telephone link there. All right, so looking at migration, now. So migrate is now in Drupal core. Yay. So you probably already have that. You just have to turn it on if you want it. And then there are a few kind of helper modules here that make migrate a lot more usable, I'd say. So we'll start out with migrate plus. I would say you're probably going to want to use this. So it just extends it. So there's some processing plugins that it adds, and some sources as well. On the source front, another kind of common project that I like to use is the CSV. I didn't put that in here, but that's a little bonus for actually showing up or listening to the recording. So yeah, this Migrate Plus really kind of makes Migrate do what it does. And then there's also a couple of tools. The most common is the Migrate tools, which gives you some drush commands, and just kind of a better overall experience. It's nice because you can do rollbacks and kind of test your migration, see how it's going, and all that good stuff. And then there's also migration tools, totally different. And so this is being reworked in Drupal 8, but so all these features are kind of being brought over, as projects get worked on and time allows. But this is really nice, and there's a lot of focus on government in this too, where common kinds of mistakes, like all of the different ways that you might misspell Wednesday, would be automatically transformed in, as part of this, be able to scrape HTML pages and all kinds of silliness that we see in like legacy systems. And it's really just like, I don't know exactly how far back this goes, but probably the better part of a decade of, just kind of built up things that are weird in migrations. This makes them less weird. So let's see. All right, so with links, we have easy breadcrumb, and it is pretty easy if you just kind of set it up and you've got kind of a simple thing going on. But if you want to, as always, if you want to go nuts, then it can be difficult breadcrumb. So there's, it's pluggable also, and you can get in there and, have all kinds of funny things happening with your breadcrumbs. You can make it go exactly the way that you want to. And since most of us are pretty govy here, we'd like to be able to know when we're going off of our site or when we're going away from the .gov or .mil top-level domains. And so external links really makes it easy to do that. Well, it makes it a lot easier to do that. You can set it up where it'll do the pop-up message where it says, "Hey, you're leaving our site," just so you know. I don't know exactly what the wording is. I can't remember, but you know what I'm talking about. So you can set it up when it's just leaving your site, or you can have it for any .gov or .mil domain. As you'll probably find out, is the is the deal in your project. And external links extra does a little bit of extra coolness. Gives you like some options if you want to do modals and just kind of cool extra stuff there. And there's also open data. And if you want to know more about this, you can go to I think there's an open data booth, right?
The Civic Actions booth. You can talk to us about DCAN, the open source open data platform.
I'm so glad Stephanie came to this presentation.
I'm so glad you're giving it.
Yeah, so there was a summit yesterday, and all kinds of great things happening here with DCAN, and it could be a whole day thing. So I'm just going to say that, and if you want to maybe spend another day doing it, you can. All right, so forms. This session was originally scheduled to be at the same time as the web form session, but it's not, so we probably have a lot more people here, which is awesome. So yeah, the web form module, Jacob is here, so if you want to find out like a lot about that, you can certainly bug him. But it's pretty awesome. It's really comprehensive. It has sensible defaults, and there's like almost like a sub sort of developer community around it. So it has its own Slack channel, and there are people in there who are really helpful, and Jacob himself will help out in there if you need it. So yeah, really cool. I believe doing code sprints downstairs. Okay, code sprints on web form. Yes. This week. So if you want to really get your web form face on, you can do it this week. 90% sure he's going to be helping. Yeah, I would bet on that. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so maybe you've got a contact form or something where you don't want bots to spam you like this weird GIF. So Honeypot is a pretty good solution for that. It's not as obtrusive as the CAPTCHA, which makes you enter in like some text or solve a human puzzle of some sort. So there are a few, CAPTCHA modules also that you can use, but I think, still like to use Honeypot at this point because it's pretty good and it doesn't have that kind of annoyance factor of having to, solve a puzzle or try to figure out, is that a 7 or a 1 or an L when you're trying to type in the CAPTCHA. Okay, so for email, there's the mail log / mail developer project. And this is nice if you don't actually want to send an email, but you want to test your system to see if it is sending an email, and if so, what that email would look like if it were sending. So this is pretty cool. It just kind of pops up the email on your screen, and it's got the from, to, subject, and body, and you can see what you didn't send in an email while you're testing. This can also go in the logs, so you can check it out under the reports, and pretty cool. Also, if you're using Amazon Simple Email Service, Simple Email Mailer is a good one. Pretty simple. All right, for search, we like to use Search API, and that can be used with either Apache Solar Search or Elastic Search connector. Are two pretty common solutions to use for search. And then the Facets project also makes it way more awesome. So if you're not familiar with Facets, maybe you wanted to search for, you're like on a site where you were searching for shoes, but you just wanted to get boat shoes. So you could do that using faceted search pretty easily. And that's going to be like these little check boxes here, and you see the numbers are showing you how many items that there are of that particular facet. So let's see, I'm going to go with some Dockers, probably, and I want navy, of course. So yeah, that makes it a lot easier. I can deal with two options now, so that's kind of an example of faceted search right there. And those projects make it a lot easier to integrate that with your Drupal site. The regular Drupal search is pretty meh. Yeah. So probably want to use one of these. All right, so I almost skipped over this slide, but then I talked to an accessibility person. They convinced me to keep it in. So this is actually a Google Chrome extension that I like to use. It's called Axe, and you can just basically run it on any page of your site. Just as a developer, you can run it on your local or whatever, and it'll just audit your page for accessibility and give you a little report. It'll tell you like how bad the problems are, and some things that you can do just right away and take care of your accessibility before it even gets into the code base. So kind of use that as you go along. It's not really a Drupal project, but I honestly couldn't even find any Drupal projects that are like accessibility, and I asked the accessibility person, and she didn't know of any either, so I figured I was okay doing this slide. All right. And so you might have gone to Fenn's security talk this morning at 10. Anyone? Yes. That guy is secure. So if you missed it, you should check that out. But also, I'll just kind of go over a few things. And I will mention that that there are, if you're doing compliance, which sometimes go along with security, a lot of these projects will map to specific compliance requirements. And Fenn's talk goes pretty deep into that. So if you're trying to figure out your compliance matrix and you're wondering what you should do, you can kind of mix these projects with that and get yourself hopefully compliant and secure at the same time. So a lot of this is dealing with auth, which I'm thinking is authentication. I'm trying to think if it's authorization. No, it's authentication. So if you need something to do tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be giving an in-depth discussion on single sign-on which is the simple SAML PHP authentication project. And it can get pretty hairy, so I'm not going to go too far into it right now, but I'll just say 3 o'clock tomorrow, we will talk all about that. And if you are doing that, you're pretty much set with your authentication because something else kind of takes care of it. But either way, you probably want to be using two-factor authentication, which is like, there's a lot of different ways to do it. That's why it's like two-factor. It doesn't necessarily define what those factors are. But this project makes it pretty easy to do. Maybe a little too easy. You do want to make sure that you've turned this on for at least one user before requiring it, because you can lock yourself out of your own site, which I've done, not in production, but it's a little pro tip there. Make sure you enable it at least for your own user or somebody's user. So that's the kind of thing where you could get like a one-time token on your phone, or you could have a UB key, like a little USB kind of dongle thing, or recovery codes. SMS is not the best way to do it, like text messaging, but I suppose it's better than not, maybe. And that's that. So you can use your two-factor authentication. If you're really cool, you call it TFA. You can use that on your single sign-on system or on just your Drupal sign-on. And so login history is another one, which just kind of keeps a log of who logged in when. And that can be nice for auditing purposes, and some compliance requirements as well. If you like to work in the middle of the night, maybe, then people can see that you've logged in then, and there's the login history. Pretty simple to set up there. Session limit is... let me just check this, because there's so many. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Yes, so this is the number of simultaneous sessions per user. So if I'm Dan and I'm logged in here on this computer, I cannot log in as Dan on that computer, because maybe I'm limited to one, or I don't know, maybe I'd be limited to two for some reason. That's configurable, but just kind of helps with security, so you don't have many people logging in as the same person at the same time.
It's not like Netflix accounts. Can't share.
Right, it's not like Netflix, so I've heard from a friend. And also just with like sharing accounts, it's not really a great practice to just have like somebody as the username and everybody share the same account. Not good. So this kind of prevents that sort of thing from happening. Okay, an automated logout. I'm going to cheat on this one again and just see. So after a certain amount of inactivity, it will automatically log you out. So if maybe you stepped away from your workstation to, I guess people can't take smoke breaks here. I don't know what they would do. Maybe they walk around campus for 15 minutes, and you set automated logout to 5 minutes, so it would log them out, and nobody can sneak in and, put in funny things while they're away from their computer. All right. Let's see. Password manager. So that's actually not it's actually not a Drupal project, but there are a lot of different options out there. Let's see. Here's some the best password managers. So Bitwarden or KeyPass. And then LastPass is pretty nice because you can use it on the internet. You can share passwords like between your team or your clients or your mom. And same kind of thing with 1Password. So those are some good options. Really should be using a password manager. Like, I don't understand how anybody could not use a password manager. Yeah, so do it if you're not doing it. And if you are doing it, then yay. And speaking of not doing things, password policy is, we've discovered that it's actually not a good idea to enforce weird password policies. A lot of folks are still catching up to this, relatively recent discovery that forcing people to change their passwords to certain requirements is actually less secure than just letting them have whatever password they're going to make and not forcing them to make a new one at kind of random intervals. If you have to use password policy, you can, but you shouldn't, and you should try to work with the governance of your organization or with your clients to bring them forward from that kind of a situation where that's their requirement, because it's not the security best practice. And let's see. So there's also a security kit, which you can use. It's okay, but it's better to do that stuff at the web server level if you can, or if you have kind of a high volume situation where you don't even want people touching Drupal if there's any of that kind of weird stuff going on that security kit would protect from. So you can just set it at the Apache or the Nginx level, and Drupal doesn't have to deal with people trying to basically attack your website or do anything weird. It won't even touch Drupal, which is a better way to do it, if possible. And to see what's going on, you can use security review. Just did one of those, I think, last week. It's fun. You just press the button, and it tells you what your problems are, and you can fix them before you send your stuff out into the real world. So that's a cool project there. And also Coder, which is configurable to use. It's kind of like a linter. So if you're doing custom code, it will catch problems like before you even commit them in some cases. So, it's a pretty good project there. Kind of helps to keep your code base clean, and you don't have to spend the time code reviewing things that aren't gonna fly anyway. So definitely recommend that one. And with 15 seconds remaining, we have reached the end here. So I'd be curious if anyone has any projects that they would like to share with the group, or any comments on anything we've shared so far. Yeah?
question. I noticed you said you liked conditional fields.
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if you run into any issues with it performance-wise, and if so, how have you overcome those issues?
An outstanding question. So the question is just for the folks at home. It's conditional fields. Have I run into any performance issues? And if so, how have I resolved those issues? I'm going to say not that I'm aware of as far as the performance issues. Most of the time it's going to be on the back end. So most of the most of the back end fields are going to be pretty limited in the number of users that are on there. So we're not going to have like 1,000 people logged into the back end and trying to create nodes or something like that. I guess if you did have a system like that, I could maybe see the performance coming into play, and I'm trying to think of what I might do. I'm not really sure. But do you have any tips for the performance there? It sounds like maybe that's something you're struggling with.
We're using it on site right now, and it's pretty hard to use. We're using it on contact forms in Core. And
Okay.
we've applied quite a few patches to work around quite a few issues. So
Okay.
I was just wondering if that was specific to us or if you
Right.
similar.
Okay. It sounds like somebody's using it on the contact form on the front end. So yeah, I don't know if it was really designed for that. Maybe. Maybe. It sounds like an interesting problem, though. I don't know if I can solve it right here, right now.
What I would recommend for that, use web forms instead. It has conditional logic. And the only thing I've noticed from a front end is if you're not using, like for example, the default select box, like you're using something like chosen or the ones that prettify your select boxes, then sometimes the Ajax doesn't refresh it. So you'll just need a patch to make sure that it reinitializes.
Okay. Yeah, and just to repeat for the recording, there was someone else in the audience who suggested using web form instead of contacts, which I think is probably good practice in Drupal 8. Anyway, and then there are some patches for like...
Well, it's just like when you do your conditional and you're using something like, it's called chosen, and
Yeah.
just make your select boxes pretty, then
Right.
that won't initialize
Oh, okay.
your field.
Okay, so if you're using chosen with web form, there's a patch for that.
Yeah, pretty.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
The simple sample is the PHP.
Uh-huh.
This is something you can integrate directly to the user roles. When user login sample, it automatically assigns the role into the tool. Instead of manually someone handling the tool.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go over this in my session tomorrow at 3, but with Simple Sample, you can configure it to create a Drupal user when you log in with single sign-on. It's pretty highly configurable that way. Or if you have an existing user, it can link them up based on an arbitrary field, probably email address. Yeah. All right, anybody else? Got one up here?
I wanted to just add accessibility. I know you had Axe up there, but
Mhm.
use Site Improve. So Site Improve is a good tool for Google sites. Use plugins for that.
Okay.
Cost for Site Improve, but it's a SaaS.
Okay. Site improve. Okay. So for accessibility, Site Improve is a recommendation.
But site improve actually is going to be after we publish it out. Not
Yeah,
at the
no,
end.
it's post-production.
But accessibility is still like a pre-production.
Right, that is good.
Okay. All right. Looks like we're good. Anyone else? Yeah? Okay. Thanks.